It's Emil Guillermo. Emil, I'm up to you. How are you? It's Thursday. If I'm a little out of sorts, it's because I get a note this morning from a dentist saying, "Hey, come on in. I got a space." I mean, and so I go. I've been waiting since COVID. This is one of the first times. I mean, going to a dentist is traumatic. I figured I might as well go now before the spike. And then, wouldn't you know, I waited too long for my temporary crown, and it looks like I might have to do the whole thing again. So I'm thinking about dentistry. I'm thinking about all these other things, and then I read the news, and the news is, it's a good thing the mainstream media doesn't cover the news for Asian Americans that much, because the news for Asian Americans is just really bad right now. This is our month. This is Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and it's just bad. It's not good. It's like, why don't we just crawl back in the hole? We don't feel safe. We're being attacked. We're being killed. I mean, if you look at the thing that happened in Queens, the murder in Queens, and they have another one in New York. They're attacking Asian Americans, restaurant workers. So we'll talk about that today. That's worth talking. Every day this month should be a celebration of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month. But instead, it's a lament. And because stuff's happening to us, it's not supposed to happen during the month that we honor our heritage, except our heritage, let's face it, is cruel racism administered to us from day one, from the very beginning, from when the first Filipinos step foot, the first Chinese, the first Japanese, the moment they step foot. And then they're here, they live their lives, they get excluded. It's our history. But this is heritage. It's a heritage month, not history month. History, we could say, yeah, that happened. But we learn from history. We don't inherit history. We're supposed to learn from history and say, yeah, that was bad. The exclusion law, Chinese exclusion law, 19th century, that was bad. Oh, the Anti-Immigration Acts, 1924, against all Asians, that was bad. The specific anti-Filipino exclusions, 1934 Tidings McDuffie Act, that was bad. We need to learn this. Mind you, this is not critical race theory. This is just history. We need to learn this, but learning is one thing. Inheriting the legacy of hate and racism, that's another. We got to break that. We got to fight that. Anyway, welcome to this program. This is the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs. That's my way of the nomenclature, right? Our naming convention. We could be Asian American X, get the ethnicity in there. If you're Hmong, AAHs, the Ahs. Sunni Lee's an or you can be an Asian American Cambodian, an AACA. You can have the M if you want, an ACAM, an ACAM, an Asian American Thai, an ATS, and of course the Chinese, Asian American Chinese, ACHs, the Yeah. An order of the number 2 to Flatbush. I'm an AAF, an Asian American Filipino. Anyway, welcome to the program. As I said, a lot to discuss today. I know a lot of Asian Americans are basketball fans. And if you live in LA, then you're maybe prone to being a Laker fan. I don't know why. I mean, are they worthy of your fanship? But I know that because California is the most Asian American place. I mean, look, I know New Yorkers are close, but they're not rooting for the Knicks. You're not, are you? And the Nets are out. Can't be rooting for the Nets. I mean, Kevin Durant is out in Greece posing with models on Twitter or something. And of course, if you're from Hawaii, then, you reserve the right to be a West Coaster. So you're either Lakers or Warriors. And that's what I want to bring up today first, because sports is the thing that brings us together. And if you saw the Warriors game last night, did they show up? They didn't even call it in. Well, if they called it in, that would be one thing. But they actually flew from the West Coast to Memphis. They actually they sold tickets to this thing. It wasn't an exhibition, but it was an embarrassing insult when the Golden State Warriors were losing by as much as 55 points. The final score is like 39 points down. It was an embarrassing display of professional sports. So much so that I have friends who say, Emil, you're wasting your time watching that garbage. You're wasting your time. Just like, why do you even bother? That's just capitalism, in shorts, shooting hoops from 30 feet. And who cares? It's a business. Yeah, I know it's corporate, but it's play, it's fun, it's recreation, it's our way of like letting off steam. It's a team. It's our team, right? But when the team doesn't show up, when the team doesn't even call it in, a team loses by 39 points. These are champions. Do you say, well, the Memphis Grizzlies, they're so young and they're so vibrant? Well, they weren't even playing with their most vibrant superstar, John Morant. It was just all the other Grizzlies who were looking young while the Warriors were looking senile and old. Well, Jonathan Kuminga is 19. He's not senile. What's going on? I mean, to me, if you want an example of the worst of professional sports and why you should not be a supporter of professional sport, I mean, occasionally now, you shouldn't be a fanatic. You shouldn't be like raving mad, calling up sports radio and, wearing a jersey and going to games and spending thousands of dollars on season tickets, all the things that I have done in my lifetime. You should not do that. You should not do that, because teams are made up of humans, and at the highest level of professional sports, they are millionaires, and at some point, they will let you know that they don't care. You are not the boss of them. They will gladly take your money and put on their show, and they don't care. And I would have gladly have changed places and say, look, put me in, coach. I'll shoot the damn ball. I can pass it around as well as those. Well, okay, maybe not as well, but for what the Warriors did last night, it was like they did not show up. And they were up. Here's the thinking. They were up 3-1. They needed one more game to close out the series. They could have ended it in 4, but why? Why close it out in 4? If you close out a game in 4, there's a game 5, 6, and 7, which means additional income to the networks, to the teams, additional revenues to all the businesses adjacent to the arenas in the respective cities. They make more money if it goes 7 games. Makes more money if it goes 6 games, if it goes 5 games. But if it closes out in 4 games, then you don't make that extra money. The extra advertisements. Players do get extra rest. That's worth something, because then you're ready to play the big bad, either Phoenix Suns or the Dallas Mavericks, whatever team emerges in that season or that series. And that series is going maybe 6 or 7 games. They're going to be tired and beat up. You have an advantage. But do the Warriors care about that? Do they say, oh, yeah, let's do it that? No. They threw in the towel. It just made me so mad. And here I am texting my daughter, who has become a basketball fan. And I'm saying, what is wrong with these Warriors? These aren't the Warriors. And she's watching it from across the country saying, I'm going to go to sleep. This is a blowout. I said, it can't be a blowout. They got to win this. It was a blowout. It was worse than a blowout. It was a demoralizing, faith-crushing display that made me understand that professional sports is just capitalism in shorts and a nice diversion. But get back to your life. Get back to your, it's not worth. I mean, I usually say, look, sports is something we can argue about and get back to normal, because look, we can't argue about abortion. We can't argue about affirmative. We can't argue about any of those other things. But sports is a safe place. You might be able to argue with people you disagree with otherwise and say, hey, well, that guy's a raving lunatic when it comes to X. Name your issue. Guns, abortion, affirmative action. But, you know, we both root for the same team. Go team. But after last night's Warrior game, I don't care. And I know that Asian Americans love basketball. And I know Asian Americans in the Philippines have flown to San Francisco to see the home games of this series, as they have over the last few years. I know that for a fact. They buy the tickets, they come here, they make it a weekend, see relatives, they go back. But this was a crushing loss if you believe that your teams care anything about you. And here's the thing. The teams are nothing without us. Nothing. So I'm just rethinking my relationship to professional sports. That's me. That's how bad I hated watching last night's Warrior game. I would never turn it off. And you know, if you watch the first 4 games of the series, you know, this was the 5th game closeout. You know, they were going to win 4-1, hopefully. But now they're going to have a 6th and the 7th game. And, you know, every game has been close, right down to like the final minute. I think the Warriors just got lazy. I think as a fan, I'm going to get lazy, and I'm not going to care. Take that, Golden State Warriors. I know. I don't know what gets me more upset, when my congressmen don't do the right thing, or when my basketball players don't do the right thing. I don't know. Anyway, all right. So I got that off my chest. Now let's talk about this thing that I saw in the LA Times, because this is important. We'll get to the violence. The violence is real, but we'll have our own little violence segment for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month. But this was in the LA Times, and it's important to understand it, because before I do that, my heart goes out to the guy in the Mega Millions draw, John Crow. Now, he just looks Asian to me. I don't know him. I don't know his background, but I saw him and I saw that he picked 6 instead of 9, or said 6 when it was actually a 9. My heart goes out to him, because, you know, this is a mistake. Now, maybe he just wants the publicity. I doubt it. There was like, 80 some million on the line, and it's on the news. And, you know, the correct numbers were, and I'll do this as a service because I know some of you Asian Americans love to gamble, love to take a shot. We'll take a flyer on that Mega Millions. Here's the numbers: 15, 19, 20, 61, 70, and the Mega Ball was 9. But John Crow said 6. I hope John Crow doesn't get in trouble, because I'll tell you, the story was important to me, because when I saw it, I said, that guy's an Asian, and he screwed up. Well, I guess that the bright side of things is that take down another layer of that model minority myth. I mean, that's a myth. There it is. Thank you, John Crow, for letting people know we're not perfect. We can see the number 6 and it's really a 9. We can screw up everyone's hopes and dreams about getting the Mega Millions. We're not perfect. That's how you see Asian American screw ups. You see it like, oh, as an individual, it's not all of us. And hey, we're not perfect. We're not the model minority. Not even when it comes to Mega Millions. All right. So let me talk about LA, because this is kind of interesting. There's a lot of people in LA. You know that, right? I mean, there's a ton of people in LA. And can you guess how many? How many? The population of LA? Like, all right, San Francisco is like 842,000. That's a lot. I'm in partial to San Francisco, but it's small, right? It's actually 4th in terms of counties in California. All right, San Jose, 976,000. Wow, Emil, 976 in San Jose? Well, then that LA's got to be bigger than that. Well, all right, number 2 is San Diego at 1.37 million. 1,374,790 in San Diego. Oh, wow. LA County's got to be bigger than that. It's got to be like, if San Diego's 1.3 million, then LA County's got to be what, 2 million? No. 3 million? No. 4 million? No. And let me get my glasses out. 5 million? No. 6 million? No. Oh, come on, Emil. 7 million. LA County's got to be 7 million. No. Okay, Emil, I know you're pulling my leg, right? I know there are a lot of Asians. I just said 7 million. You said no. 8 million. 8 million? No. 8 million. You're saying no to 8 million, Emil. Are you crazy? Look, I know it's big. It's LA County. You got all those people from Hollywood. They got big heads. It's big, but how big is it, Emil? 9 million? No. Oh, Emil, come on. You're pulling my leg now, right? No, I'm not pulling your leg. We're too crowded in LA County to pull anyone's leg or anyone's appendage. Here is the total. 9,861,224 people as of January 1st, 2022. LA County. That is a lot of people. 9.8 million. 9.86 million. 9,861,224 people. Look, I got my glasses on. That's right. The 2020 census. Here's what the LA Times says. Only 10 states have more people than LA County. States. LA County, if it were a state, would be the 11th most populous state in the union after Michigan, which has a governor, its own governor, and its 2 senators. It would be just above New Jersey, which has Cory Booker. And the question comes up, wow, LA County could be its own state? Well, here's the thing about California. California is like, what, 35 million people, 36 million people in California? And, you know, there are times when I toy with the idea, do I want to go anywhere? Would I leave to go to New York? Or unlikely. Unless the climate changes for the better, When I go live in Washington, again, Washington, D.C., all I have to do is remember the time I was standing inside some shelter at the bottom of a metro station, freezing my butt off, and I was just saying, no, to ever leaving California again. So I'm just saying that I read these numbers off to you because California is the most Asian American state. More so than Hawaii. Hawaii has more Asians in terms of percentage, but in sheer numbers, it's California. I mean, it's like the 6th, 7th largest economy in the world. It's got the people. And as I was saying yesterday, check out, this is show 307. I was saying in show 306 yesterday that when it comes to abortion, which couldn't get by the filibuster, couldn't get past the Roe v. Wade vote, or the vote to codify abortion, didn't get past 49-51. Joe Manchin, of course, one of the negatives, joining the Republicans. The amazing thing is the country is being divided up into yes-no states. California is a yes. Texas, clearly a no. I lived in both. I lived in Texas. Florida, a no state. You just look at the map, and where are the places where people say yes? Where are the places that people say no? And when it comes to people of color, when it comes to Asian Americans, California is definitely a yes state. And we should keep it that way. But now, this item in the LA Times is just bringing up the idea that we got all these people, and what are we doing when states with less than 1/4 of California's population have the same number of U.S. senators? What happens? What kind of country do we lead or live in when we look at a vote like the vote that would codify abortion rights for women, and we can't get it done because 49 say yes and 51 say no? And some of those no's are from states that are less than 1/4 of California's population. Same number of U.S. senators. Now, this is not a new thing. People talking about the disproportion of the representation, but people are talking about it now. They're talking about this, and it may not come to pass that, what would happen? California secedes from the union? No, that's not going to happen. But one of the reasons why I'm reluctant to go anywhere, to move anywhere, even to someplace cheaper, that is because California, the state with the most Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, is a yes state. In general, it's a yes state. Yes, immigration. Yes, abortion. Yeah, I mean, it's a yes state. It's our home. And I just don't see other places matching up to it. So it just surprises me to see this item in today's LA Times, but it's a mind blower when you think about it. LA County, 9.8 million people. It could be the 11th largest state. Think about that next time you say, oh, California. What is it good for? Or how great is it? Or what, just think of the size of California and how it could be. Like I said, I'm not beginning a discussion on secession. But if you're ever thinking about leaving California for someplace else, think twice. All right, so now let's get to the violence, because the violence is real. It's real, it's sad, and it's happening. It's happening around the country. Gotta find it first. We got the widow of the murdered Chinese delivery man. Remember him? They had a candlelight vigil yesterday. Ji Wen Yan was killed over the weekend. I believe over the weekend. Let's see the background story here. He was a Xi Yan worked in Forest Hills and had been on a scooter making a delivery when a shooter fired several times and it struck him it was actually a couple weeks ago. Just 45 years old. So they had a vigil yesterday. Congressman Grace Meng also has been actively trying to help out the family. And this is what the widow said. I want to know why, since last November, his boss and colleagues have been threatened multiple times and nobody could protect them. I want to know why, New York City, you owe me a life, you owe me a husband, you owe me an explanation to the Chinese community. Zhao, the wife of Xi Yan, said through an interpreter. And Meng, along with City Council member Lynn Schulman, said this was such a horrible and senseless tragedy. We are confident that the person responsible will be apprehended and brought to justice. You know, I bring this up because it's just so sad to see this happen during, well, any time, but especially during Asian American Pacific Islander Native Hawaiian Heritage Month. And of course, you know, there's a GoFundMe drive for the family. They've raised about $200,000. This is a sad thing about Xi Yan. People knew him, they liked him. They knew him in the community. He was riding a scooter, delivering food. But this thing has been going on, and nothing was done by the cops, apparently. This is what the wife is saying at yesterday's candlelight vigil. And we want to thank Azam News, my friend Randall over there, posting the story. But every time I see this happen to someone, and they talk about, oh, we have a GoFundMe page. God, I think, you know, they're Asian. They should have bought insurance. I mean, 45. I don't know what his health situation was, but he could have bought a $250,000 insurance policy for like maybe $30, $40, $50 a month. The term policy. Could have bought $1 million on term just to be safe. And it would have been tax-free. It just pains me every time I see something like this and they say, we're going to put something on GoFundMe. Great. GoFundMe is great. It's not tax-free. It's not, you don't know what you're going to get. It's not going to take care of all the family's needs. And it surprises me because here's an Asian American. They should have known that if you're going to do something like that, don't cut from the monthly budget the insurance premium. I know that's the instinct, to cut the insurance premium, but don't. And all right, now let me full disclosure. I'm licensed as an insurance person. I know because I know the business. I mean, I kept my license through the years. But I say that to people because when you see situations like this, when you see people go to GoFundMe, you say, oh man, they need more than a GoFundMe. They need more than a GoFundMe. So that was in Forest Hill in New York City. Now I thought, oh, I saw another story that this can't be a second one, and in fact it is. This was just yesterday. 2 armed men beat, robbed, and shot a Chinese food delivery man in Crown Heights. They took his food delivery, cell phone, and $5 of cash. He was dropping off an order at an apartment building, 9:20 p.m. on Saturday, according to the New York Daily News. 2 hooded men in surgical masks. Well, at least they weren't anti-vaxxers. That's the best thing you can say about those guys. The cops also said the two suspects punched the victim in the face before taking the items. This is according to the New York Post. The surveillance video shows the pair pressing the victim to the wall while they go through his pockets. The delivery worker was not struck and refused medical attention. So this happened after Ji Wen Yan in Queens was fatally shot in Astoria. So this is now the second time it's happened in the last couple of weeks. This is not supposed to happen during Asian Pacific American Native Hawaiian Heritage Month. And you just have to hear the words of the widow of Ji Wen Yan, who spoke at that candlelight vigil last night. Kun Ying Zhao says, I want to know why since last November, my husband's boss and colleagues have been threatened multiple times and nobody could protect them. I want to know why. New York City, you owe me a life. You owe me a husband. You owe me an explanation to the Chinese community. Kun Ying Zhao, the widow of Ji Wen Yan. Of course, she's right. Of course, she is right. So it's just, I mean, I look at ASAM News, and you don't get this on, in the mainstream news. I read off to you here because this is the micro talk show, as I say, of the AAPI and the AAXs. But it's just funny how on Asian American Pacific Islander Native Hawaiian Heritage Month, no one's really celebrating. Although, hey, James Hong got his Hollywood star. Thank goodness, James Hong, oldest person to do so. Sometimes it's going to come late. It's going to happen. Hats off to James Hong. You see his face, James Hong, Chinese American actor. Hats off to him. Or, Shohei Ohtani. Well, he's Asian in America. He's still Japanese. There's a difference. But still, when he does his first career Grand Slam, hey, that's reason to celebrate. It is not reason to celebrate when they do a California poll just yesterday. It says that 3 in 4 Asian Americans here in the state worry about public safety. 3 in 4. Poll was conducted last month by Center for Asian Americans United for Self-Empowerment, CAUSE. Oh, we love the acronyms. Center for Asian Americans United for Self-Empowerment, CAUSE cause. Very good. It was in partnership with Hispanas, Organized for Political Equality, not to be outdone, HOPE, Hispanas Organized for Political Equality, and the Los Angeles Urban League, LAUL. Anyway, it's the 5th poll they've done. Roughly 72% of the Asian American and Pacific Islanders polled said they were worried about being victims of a hate crime or physical violence. Think about that. 3/4. 57% said they were dissatisfied with crime and public safety in their area. More than half. A majority of the AAPI's poll felt they were frequently discriminated against. 71% of AAPI in California said frequently or sometimes discriminated against. The percentage has increased from 55% in 2020 to 71% today. This is sad. You read that and oh my God, you need these benchmarks. Without these benchmarks, you wouldn't really know where we were, right? I mean, you would say, Well, it feels good today. I walked outside and some long arm of injustice didn't come out and like hit me on the side of the head. I guess that's good. But oh my God, it's like going from 50 to 71. More of us are in fear. And it's not due to COVID, it's just due to the virus known as racial animosity, racial antipathy, racial hate. It's there. It's been there the last 2 years. And it's just tough when we celebrate Asian American, Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiian Heritage Month. The thing we are inheriting is this animosity that people have for the other. This animosity that we bring on because Americans have become more xenophobic over time. You can go back to the 19th century. You can go back to the turn of this century. You can go back a year ago to Atlanta. I mean, we talked about, the Atlanta killings. I mean, that should tell you that this legacy of hate just continues. And then this is the thing that got me yesterday. This is in Dallas. I lived in Dallas. Look, I know Texas is now becoming a no state. N-O, not an N-O-H state. It's an N-O state. 3 women shot in Korean hair salon in Dallas is the report. I lived in Dallas. I lived in Houston. Of course, in the 70s. Things have changed, Emil. I'll say. I mean, that's like 50 years that I was there, right? Not quite 50, but NBC News Dallas, WFAA reports, man walked into a Korean hair salon, boom, injured 3 women. Man stopped his vehicle, walked across the parking lot into the Royal Hair Salon, opened fire. Salon owner, an employee, and customer all have been rushed to the hospital with what are believed to be non-life-threatening injuries. All the victims are Korean. The suspect escaped in a dark-colored minivan. Thank goodness. I mean, who knows what this is about? Maybe who knows what the suspect? Suspect might have been Asian. It was a violent transgression against Asian Americans, though. And until we find out, can't be sure. Can't be sure if it's a hate crime. There's no evidence of it being a hate crime, according to the Star Telegram there in Fort Worth. So, you don't know. But taking a larger, broader bird's eye view, doesn't look good. Man goes into a Korean hair salon, shoots, wounds 3 people. It's just not the way I want to say Happy Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So I talked a lot about Marcos on this program the other day. Check show 306 and 305. It's still not looking good for the people for good governance, people who want to see who want to make sure that the Marcoses, the son of a dictator, wasn't put back into power, but it looks like he's the presumptive winner. And Here's the U.S. helping out their former colony. President Joe Biden spoke with Bong Bong, and people, depending upon your publication, they're calling him Bong Bong, one word, Bong Bong, or they're calling him BBM for Bong Bong Marcus, or they're calling him by his proper name, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. I guess they're not calling him Jun. Oh, Jun, come here, Jun. But they're calling him Bong Bong. I'm reading the Inquirer.net, and this is Biden speaking to Bong Bong. Or actually, this is what the White House said. President Biden underscored that he looks forward to working with the president-elect to continue strengthening the U.S.-Philippine alliance. Well, there was an alliance. There sort of still is, but it's been strained under Duterte. To go back to the statements, while expanding bilateral cooperation on a wide range of issues, including the fight against COVID-19, addressing the climate crisis, promoting broad-based economic growth, and respect for human rights. Oh, that respect for human rights, that sort of gets me. So, more extrajudicial killings? Gotta wonder. Maybe not under Bong Bong, but Bong Bong's spokesman said the relationship with the U.S. will get better. Quote, as far as our relationship with the United States under the administration of President-elect Bong Bong, see, his own people call him President-elect Bong Bong. It's better to say President-elect Bong Bong because you don't have to say Marcos. Because as soon as you mention Marcos, people say, oh no, the dictator? The spokesperson, Attorney Vic Rodriguez, says the relationship will get better. I assure you and the Filipino people that our relationship with the United States will be better. And as we speak, I think I'm at liberty to say we are expecting a call from the president. So there should be a call. Rodriguez said that the foreign policy of Marcos Jr. will be inclusive while also ensuring the interests of the Filipino people come first and are never compromised. What I can tell you, you can expect and look forward to a better relationship with our longtime partner and ally, the United States. We will not be exclusive to anyone. The foreign policy of President-elect Bong Bong, it will be inclusive. The interests of the Filipino people and the national interest comes first and will never be compromised, especially on our territorial integrity. So that means get tough on China. I don't know. Read between the lines. Doesn't say that, but get tough. America, Philippines together. Sounds good. So Marcos is still up by something like 31.1 million votes, with 99% of the votes in. I think it's just insurmountable. So Lenny Robredo, the vice president, is out of it, really. But now we should turn our attention to Rodrigo Duterte, the outgoing president, because he's saying some things that are making some people jump. Here, this is the headline from the Inquirer.net. President Rodrigo Duterte says he wants to kill 3 or 5 drug lords before he steps down from office in June. It's got a couple weeks. Let's get us some drug lords. Duterte, known for his administration's bloody war against drugs, reiterated that his successor should continue the program. That, of course, would be terrible because that means that Marcos, Bong Bong Marcos, would be, well, he would be a dum-dum for doing it, but he would be essentially saying yes to extrajudicial killings. It may be the only thing that Marcos could do to really alienate him from the West, which is trying to get Duterte for the extrajudicial killings. But if Marcos insists on protecting Duterte from the International Criminal Court, or if Marcos insists on carrying out the same sort of plan, well, there's your Achilles heel for Marcos. But see, here's the thing: in the Philippines, this is regular policy. Can you imagine, like well, Trump said some really stupid things during his time. But, in the Philippines, he says Duterte urges to fight those involved in illegal drugs. He says, before I leave, let's finish 3 or 5 drug lords. I want to kill them. I do not want them alive. He says this. Of course, he says this in Tagalog, or in the Philippine language. I'm reading a translation. Siguro bako ako magalis makatapos ng tayo ng mga 3 o 5 drug lords. Gusto ko patayan, ayoko ng buhay. That's what he said in Tagalog, but he really meant to say, before I leave, let's finish 3 or 5 drug lords. I want to kill them. I do not want them alive. Now that would worry me. That would worry me. That would worry me. The Philippines. Hey, they're back on the map. We're going to talk about them now because Bong Bong is in charge. And he may be apt to make Donald Trump look a whole lot better than... I don't want to say that. Because I don't want to make it sound like I'm pro-Trump. I'm just saying... I said the other day that what's going to make people be able to live with Bong Bong, well, number one, he's got to take himself out of the how am I compared to Duterte kind of question, establish himself for the people. But whatever he does, the thing that's going to make him survive, or that's going to help Filipino Americans survive with him, is just remember what Trump was like. Remember how you dealt with Trump, how things happen. You say, oh no, that can't happen. Oh, it is happening. Oh no, that never happens. Oh, it is happening now. Oh, well, the point is we survived Trump. I think we'll be able to survive Bong Bong, but not without some, heavy loyal opposition kind of activity to make sure he doesn't take the Philippines and democracy for a ride. This news story broke yesterday, and I didn't really get a chance to get to it. But some of you know that I did a show called New California Media. We talked all about the ethnic media. And if I were still doing that show today, it was on KCSM in San Mateo, San Francisco Bay Area, on KVIE in Sacramento, also on KLSC, the schools channel in LA, PBS. And we talked about the ethnic media, and we talked about the Arab media and the Palestinian media. If we were on today, the show is called New California Media. We'd be talking about Shireen Abu Akleh, the Al Jazeera journalist, TV journalist. Told stories about ordinary Palestinians. She was becoming popular all throughout the Arab world for reporting on Palestine, or in Palestine, on Palestine. Those damn prepositions. She was a native of Jerusalem, a citizen of the U.S., just 51, and she was killed by Israeli forces yesterday. Now, I saw the headline. I didn't want to go with it until I read more. This is sad. Now, I saw some video this morning. Shireen Abu Akleh. Now, the Al Jazeera, whom she worked, say it was Israeli forces. No doubt. Israeli forces killed him. They're doing an autopsy. They're going to see. We'll find out. Israelis say, well, she was shot by, the people involved in this raid, but not necessarily Israelis. So this is a big deal. And my heart goes out to Abu Akleh's family, her friends. It's important to go out there and be out there, tell stories, the courage it takes. And this woman wasn't just covering the Palestinian stories. I mean, she was doing a 360 all around the West Bank. She was learning Hebrew, apparently. And she was, at 51, she was a knowledgeable journalist. She was Christian. She was a reporter with heart, which is something you don't see very often. She says in one video that she chose journalism to be close to the people. It might not be easy to change the reality, but at least I could bring their voice to the world. I mean, at the very least, that's what journalists, whether you're on TV, which she was, or radio, or print, I happen to have done all three. But it begins with getting to know sources, getting to know the people, getting their voices, and telling other people's stories, putting their stories above your own. And here's the thing that gets me. I mean, reading reports about her death, seeing the video. She was on assignment in the city of Jenin in the occupied West Bank. She was covering Israeli raids on a refugee camp. And she had a flak jacket, a blue flak jacket, press. I mean, sometimes we think that this is our, it can't be violated. This is our shield, right? And it just makes you a target sometimes. And you have courage. You have the courage of your convictions, the courage of your belief in this thing called journalism to tell the story. I mean, that's what we are. We're storytellers, not necessarily our own. We're telling stories in service to a people, in service to a world, right? The people whose stories we're telling, to others who need to hear this story, so that we can bridge this chasm that exists between the people whose stories we're telling and the people who need to hear these stories, so that we can overcome these chasms between us. So it's disheartening to hear how she was shot in the head. She had her flak jacket. She had the words press across her jacket. She was shot in the head. So it makes me think this was not just some accident. This was something happening. Her employer, Al Jazeera, says she was assassinated in cold blood. In cold blood. This is what happens when you have the courage to tell the stories that must be told. Shouldn't happen. The truth tellers, the storytellers, they need to be protected. But it didn't happen in the case of Shireen Abu Akleh. So that's where we are today. it's tough. Journalists are getting killed all over the world. Philippines, happens there. Radio reporters, people who have the courage to tell the truth. We're all just truth tellers. Yeah. And, when I had that show, New California Media, we would take people from all these different areas. Al Jazeera wasn't on then, at least not in the way it is now. We would have had their voice on. We would have talked about the death of Abu Akleh. We would have talked about it. Just like we talked about the death of my friend Chauncey Bailey, editor of the Oakland Post. Okay. Regular listeners of the show know that at this point we try to get our spirits up. We try to create some space so we're not just hemmed in a booth or just pushed into sorts by pressures of life, that we realize that there's more space there. And we think of what Thich Nhat Hanh used to love to say, just getting in touch with your breath and breathing in. I like the 2-word meditation where you breathe in and say space and you breathe out and say free. Space. Free. Space. Free. And you get the sense of how much space there really is around you. Because space gives us freedom, and space gives us that sense of having more room for us to be in the moment, to be us, and not to be overcome with all the pressures that make us feel cramped, make us feel like there's nowhere to go. Space. Free. Space. Free. And, I also like to throw in a little loving kindness. Because sometimes there's that shroud of shame that we want to hide under. We want to not see outside. Sometimes it's weird. I put a blanket over my head because it feels warmer when I'm asleep. But there's a kind of comfort to being hidden. But I'm thinking, is it shame? Is there some kind of shame I'm feeling? And every time I hear shame, I think of something to break through that shame. And the only thing that breaks through that shame, clearly, is love. Self-love. Break through that shame. Space. Free. Feel the love. The love of self. And then, as is often the case, the love of self comes back. And you feel it. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo. Check out our amok.com site with all the, this is episode 307. Check out episode 306, 305, 304. 303 is nice. Shamu3 is nice. Check them all out. They're there. amok.com. Check it out on Facebook. EmilGuillermo.media. Facebook.com/EmilGuillermo.media. YouTube. My pathetic YouTube channel. Like us, subscribe, ring a bell, do whatever the algorithm says. It's a nice algorithm. Right here. On Twitter. Although Twitter's going through a shakeup. I don't know. I don't know if I like it. Although, I don't know. Elon Musk fired a bunch of guys from Twitter whose names I recognize, but it's a new Twitter over there. And until further notice, you can see our show right there. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Back in tomorrow, 2 p.m. Pacific Live. Maybe a little earlier for a little lanyap, something extra. Till then, Emil here. Mahal.